Hi there, Ronnie here coming at you with a video. It's not a video I really ever wanted to make or ever thought I'd ever have to make again, but here we go again. I am getting sick to the back teeth of successive governments showing a level of callous cowardice and showing a complete disregard for the damage they are doing, intend to do, will do. Recently, Prime Minister Keir Starmer effectively talked about cutting the benefits bill. He was going to do this to save money by essentially making it harder for people to qualify for PIP, which is a personal independence payment, what used to be called disability allowance, or DLA, disability living allowance. And just making things again harder in the hope of saving money. Because they say the benefits bill is too high, and that there's too many people off sick, and something has to change. I would agree that something has to change. Yes, there probably are a lot of people out of work, because we have a culture in this country, in the West generally, but certainly in this country and obviously in America, where employers have all the power. Very few employers pay a living wage. The minimum wage, which was an attempt to actually create a living wage, has now just given the employers, hey, we don't have to pay anything more than this. But they get round it in other ways with things like 0-hour contracts, which are supposed to be freeing for people, but actually, if you need to bring home a decent amount of money to keep a roof over your head, keep the lights on, food on the table, and so on, you need a certain amount of hours. And 0-hour contracts really mean that you're not guaranteed any hours. Employers have too much power. We've went a long way in this country to gutting the unions to ensure that employees have less and less rights. And when you put all that together, coupled with the fact that if you are someone who is disabled, be it someone who is very obviously disabled because of some physical disability, or maybe not so obvious like myself, who has a long-term mental health illness, there's no real support because there's not enough money being invested in good, solid support. good solid support not only for people going into work who are disabled, but just generally good health support, because the NHS is getting gutted from the inside out. And because of that lack of support, and because of the fragility of employment at the moment, it creates a situation where employees are under incredible stress. And I'm not surprised that people are finding it difficult to cope with all that stress. I know, because I can't cope. I don't cope well with stress at all. But to say that there's too many people ill will fix the system. Actually see where it's actually broken and actually fix the actual breaks and create a better system. Don't do these blanket things, which I think is much to appeal to a sort of right-wing base who want to blame the disabled people for the country going to the dogs. We're not to blame. I'm getting kind of sick and tired of it. I'm getting sick and tired of the othering language being used by MPs, particularly, Now, I'm very happy that the bill has found itself with some problems. That the MPs, Labour MPs, are actually rebelling against the government and saying no, not doing this. No, this is not a Labour ideal. But Starmer is so afraid of Farage and the rise of Reform UK, just as the Tories were afraid of UKIP. That I've had, it just, they're creating this terrible sort of two-tier system. They're creating a system where the disabled, be it physical, mental, or both, are being blamed for problems in society. But there's also, and this is where that kind of deals with the callousness to a degree, is the othering. It's sweeping changes without really getting to the heart of the problem and creating a system that's fair and just. If you want disabled people to work, it's very simple. Make sure there's good support for them, both in terms of health generally and support at work. Make sure the work actually pays. Make sure it's a job the person feels they can actually do. Don't just shove them into a job because, you're earning money, when it's something they don't know how to do or don't feel comfortable with, because that's only going to exacerbate the problem. It's not going to fix it. But then you've got the other bit. And this is the cowardly bit. They are quite happy to punch down. What they won't do is punch up. Several MPs have discussed an amendment to put in a tax for high-earning business owners, a sort of levy tax on profits. This would rake in, if it went through, this would rake in billions. The amount of tax that big businesses in this country don't pay is staggering compared to the benefits bill in total, let alone, even if you were to be really harsh and say that there are people gaming the system, okay, maybe there are people gaming the system, but that is minuscule compared to big businesses gaming the system and depriving government coffers of billions, if not trillions, that could be pumped into healthcare, social services, pumped into getting real support for people getting back to work. Make sure that there's an actual living rather than just a minimum wage. But Starmer's afraid to take on big business. They all seem to be so afraid to take on big business. Their argument is if we do that, business will go away. The businesses will go elsewhere, where the tax breaks are. Maybe that's true. But that's no excuse for not doing it. And when your alternative to not doing the fair thing by big business because you're afraid of them is to kick people who are already down and desperate and vulnerable, that is the act of an out and out coward. I don't care what anyone says. That's an act of a coward. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the cowardice. I'm sick of the callous disregard for people with disabilities. I mean, I'm going through hell at the moment. Between waiting on my biopsy results and I'm being moved over from ESA to Universal Credit, which is its own bunch of hurdles. So everything with me is up in the air. My stress levels are up to here. And we have a government that seems to feel that it's okay to kick people when they're down, when they're at the most vulnerable, when they're, hit the weakest in society. That's cowardly. You could solve, or at least you would have, you need the infrastructure. You need the infrastructure to actually make sustained and systemic change. But if the barrier to actually funding and fueling that infrastructure is money, screwing over the weakest and most vulnerable in society does not help you. It never helps. It is only going to make things worse. It's going to make things worse for those people. It's going to make things worse. I just get sick of it. My disability is not visible. Not directly, anyway. In moments of intense stress, when I'm sort of put in a stressful situation, it can manifest. I can become almost catatonic because my mind can't compute enough. Can't compute enough. It can't compute it fast enough. It can't compute it with any sort of clarity because I'm too overwhelmed. All my senses are just firing. And I'm not unique in that. A lot of people with long-term mental health are similar. And we're getting no help. It's not enough to just say, here's a job. You need the infrastructure. And you can't have that infrastructure without putting in place good policies and make sure that companies pay, particularly the big companies, pay their fair share. But I find it abhorrent, and I find it infuriating that time and time again, successive governments over the last 20 odd years, if not more, rather than do what is morally right, have chosen the act of cowardice and punched down. Democracy is almost dead. We really don't have governments or members of parliament anymore to any great extent because they're all kowtowing to big business. Big businesses run countries now. Because they've now got so much power that unless they get favourable treatment from people, they'll threaten to move. It's just not right. So I'm sick of it all. My mental health, which is pretty fragile as it is, has taken a knock over the last year because of my ongoing situation with my cancer diagnosis. This kind of shit from governments doesn't help me, and it won't be helping tens, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people up and down this country who aren't scroungers, who simply need help because they are the most vulnerable. And all we're getting is demonized. It's not good enough.